Hello and welcome to the SciFirst MovieTalk episode. Now in this episode I'll be discussing the 2012 horror movie The Chernobyl Diaries, as directed by Brad Parker and based on a premise by Oren Peli, who is known for his involvement with the Paranormal Activity and the Insidious horror franchises. So, I will say from the offset that I will be giving spoilers for this movie in this review. It's not a film that I don't think it holds too many surprises for many, I'm sure, but I do know how I would feel if somebody gave the film away, so even one such as this without any prior warning. So you have been warned. So if you don't want to hear of any spoilers for this movie, if this applies to you, please do switch off now, but please do come back to SciFirst MovieTalk and let me know what you thought of the film, if indeed you do watch it. As always, I would be very, very, very interested to know your thoughts. Also, I do apologise for some of my pronunciations of the words in this review. They're going to get a little bit tricky, so there'll be plenty of bloopers, I'm pretty sure. But anyway, we'll give it a go. So, the movie sees a bunch of American tourists trekking across Europe, taking in the sights as they travel to meet up with the brother of one of their group in Kiev, when they are basically enticed by the prospect of going on an extreme tourism tour to the abandoned city of Pripyat in this Chernobyl exclusion zone in Ukraine. Now a forbidden ghost city following the Chernobyl nuclear disaster of 1986. Contaminated by radioactive fallout, reclaimed by nature, and one of the eeriest and closely guarded places on the planet. A haven, basically, for those who want to take in something off the beaten track and have a tale that the others don't have to tell. In the first of a series of very bad decisions, our group of wannabe explorers head to Pripyat with their guide Yuri Ovchinin, as played by Dimitri Diatchenko, who, admittedly, is quite knowledgeable about the local area and the fallout of the Chernobyl disaster, but who isn't quite as apt as forward planning and pretty much conducting the tour on the fly, so to say. Needless to say, that the group do end up getting stuck in Pripyat after the van fails to start, kilometres away from the nearest checkpoint, leaving them completely stranded and alone. Only thing is, of course, they're not quite as alone as they think they are, and if the impending radiation exposure wasn't enough to kind of contend with already, their unscheduled stay in Pripyat is going to be one they'll want to remember. Well, they're not going to want to remember it anytime soon. That, of course, kind of banking on the fact that if any of them actually make it out alive. So, I've had the movie for quite some time. And I have actually tried to watch it once before, but did kind of switch off halfway through, as I really just couldn't kind of get into it. And that is kind of odd for these kind of horror films, is these kind of usually ride up my street. And I really did kind of find this one kind of hard to get into on kind of any kind of level. It is pretty much a rip-off of The Hills Have Eyes, like the Wrong Turn and Descent series, but yet with kind of none of the pizzazz of any of them, really. It just doesn't have that much of the Wayne story, you know? And pretty much being a bunch of people with some really strained and rusty dialogue, making some really stupid decisions in a place they really shouldn't have been. Nothing new there then, you know? And usually I don't mind that, you know, I really don't. It is kind of what you kind of expect from a film such as this. But the characters in this are so bland. It is really hard to kind of connect with any of them. And it takes just so long to get anywhere. It isn't even really that gory, which would have been something, I guess. But in the end, we are treated to tantamount to people just running around the woods, waving a Geiger counter around, but choosing pretty much to ignore that at every touch and turn. In fact, one of the scariest moments was when one of our group encountered a bear, but I would say that the radiation is quite high up on there on the list too. They do encounter a cheap-looking mutant fish and some bubbling water. The fact that we have a bunch of mutants running around really doesn't seem to matter. And it just kind of seems all a little bit inconsequential by the time they do actually make their appearance. I think the thing is, for me, is that Chernobyl was one of the worst nuclear disasters that has actually ever been, beyond anything that anybody could have imagined at that time. And to make horror film off the back of the suffering and the plight of the people who suffered that aftermath, well, I'm not entirely sure where that really kind of sits with me. Although I would admit that it isn't made directly clear that the mutants in this film were affected by the nuclear fallout, if you know what I mean. I think it's certainly insinuated, however, through the virtue of the film itself. I think if the film had kind of tried to offer us something ingenious, something new and exciting, perhaps I kind of could have worked through them issues. I mean, there are plenty of other films I have actually enjoyed that delved into far more sensitive topics. But this one just didn't even put its naturally eerie setting to any kind of use, really squandering the opportunity to bring us something really clever and imaginative, you know? Using a place not many have ever seen and not really ever been able to tread. I mean, the city of Pripyat is an eerie place in itself, steeped in history with plenty of its own urban legends, I'm sure. You know, indeed, I believe the film was actually shot on location in Pripyat for some of the scenes, but instead of using the atmosphere of this place to the film's advantage, we get something that is totally soulless, failing to capture the weight of its surroundings, and indeed something that has little in the way of an atmosphere or energy itself. Its lack of emotion and atmosphere in a place that should exude such things this just really fell short of utilising its surroundings to the best of its ability. They were there, it just felt like they took in the sights and forgot that they were actually supposed to be making a movie. So in the end, just threw a few bits and bobs of other movies and some sprinklings of radiation in there and called it a day. To be honest, it really felt like I was actually one of them tours. You know what you get on a package holiday? I must admit that Yuri was actually quite the knowledgeable guide, you know. He seemed to be on a need-to-know basis, however, but knowledgeable nonetheless. I actually enjoyed learning about Chernobyl from him, really. Probably about the most enjoyment I actually got from the film. In terms of its sensitivity to its core source material, I don't think it does too bad overall for what it actually is. You know, for as kind of sensitive as you can be about a film about radioactive mutants following an actual real-life nuclear disaster. The issue kind of affected families and loved ones, and without knowing the true origin of the mutants featured in the movie, not enough was really done to dissuade as to why they ended up being cannibals, other than radiation turning them into mutants. These were real people once, or so it would seem. It's not wholly offensive, it's just not that sensitive either, and doesn't offer anything further in return for that kind of trade-off of using real-life disaster in attempt for some really cheap and unearned scares. Overall, this movie just didn't really capture my attention, with a recycled plot, bland characters, no atmosphere, no energy, and a bunch of really cheap jump scares that really don't feel earned. It just didn't put me on the edge of my seat, you know? It just didn't pull me in, even on the second go around. It was a bit too predictable right from the start and had no real suspense or surprises left. In the end, you just can't help but kind of feel a little bit deflated. In fact, the trailers on the Blu-ray that I watched were actually scarier than the film itself. Indeed, never mind the mutants, death by radiation was probably the more gut-wrenching concept for me. So, that brings me to the end of this episode. Many thanks for watching. I do hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please leave a like. Please do hit that subscribe button for more movie reviews, trailer reactions, and other movie-related content. Absolutely loved having you here at SciFirst MovieTalk. We would definitely love to have you back. But most of all, thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.